All right, so there has been a lot of controversy around Marvel Phase 4, and particularly around the politics of it. Some people who are particularly upset about the direction it's taken have been identifying in particular the way they're handling female characters. Now, predictably, this is written off by Marvel and by the creative crew who want to work again as all being anti-woman and all being based in misogyny. But that really doesn't jive with other female-driven projects that are lauded by the same people, like the Harley Quinn cartoon, which we're going to cover in a subsequent episode, which has gone in a very radical socialist direction, as Batman has always needed to go in, particularly in these times, as Joker kind of predicted, the Todd Phillips Joker movie.
Right, the Joker's emerging as the real hero of the series.
He really is.
The franchise, right.
Yeah, like Harley Quinn at first. Look, I mean, the whole Harley Quinn premise of what they've been doing with it since she became a breakout character is that she breaks up with the Joker and plants her own flag. So you've got a strong female character with an overall kind of feminist themed plot. The difference is it's done well, and there's a saying in writing, in filmmaking, show don't tell. Harley Quinn never has a monologue about being catcalled. Now, of course, as a character, she'd probably break their kneecaps, so she doesn't have to worry about it quite as much. But they never need to put the feminism in a ham-handed monologue. It's built in. It's inherent to the story. The feminism is in the story and the way they're skillfully telling the story. And both, in my opinion, the films and the cartoon, I think is a great achievement. So She-Hulk really set off a firestorm with what a lot of people would perceive to be a very off-putting brand of fourth wave feminist preaching. And a good example of that is a monologue that really became a lightning rod after IMDb tweeted it out with the very charming admonition, "Louder for the people in the back." So we could take a look at that.
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Okay, now a big part of the problem with this monologue is she's not directing this monologue at an idealized character like, say, Superman. That monologue might make sense. What do you know about it? What do you know about the sufferings of humanity, Superman? But the Hulk is an infamously tortured soul. The whole character, it's a Jekyll and Hyde story. It's this mild-mannered scientist who can't help but turn into this raging, murderous monster when he gets angry. And in response to that, he has a monologue in the first Avengers movie. They actually cut. There was originally about 3.5-minute montage shot for Avengers of various ways that he tries to kill himself. They cut it because it was too dark for a Marvel movie. All that survived of that idea was this monologue.
I got low. I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth, and the other guy spit it out. So I moved on. I focused on helping other people. I was good, until you dragged me back into this freak show and put everyone here at risk. You want to know my secret, Adrian Romanoff? You want to know how I stay calm?
Yeah, no, this guy's walking on easy street. That character has no challenges, no problems, no nothing. If somebody catcalled him, he might understand her pain. So this is a show written by wealthy, woke feminists for that audience. It's hard to imagine who else it's for. A big critique of Phase 4 also is they're substituting agenda for storytelling. And that can only appeal to people who are going to watch her deliver that monologue and gonna yes queen over their Chardonnay on the couch and
right, exactly.
But who is that for outside of those people?
Well, if I could just interject one thing here, because you talked about how from a storytelling perspective, it really doesn't honor, you know, the essence of the Hulk character, who is himself a sort of tormented soul. And I take your point. I'm not nearly as big a fan of, you know, Marvel or DC Comics as you are. But I would take issue with the political sentiment itself. I mean, she is a white feminist. This is what white feminism is. This is what defines white feminism. This is what defines the sort of Hillary Clinton power base of the Democratic Party, which are professional class white women who feel that the defining injustice of our time is the fact that they make $190,000 a year and the man down the hall makes $210,000 a year. And solving that problem is literally, I'm not exaggerating here, much more important to them than universal health care, than any sort of environmental reform, than raising the minimum wage. 2/3 of minimum wage owners are women. So if you're a real feminist and you really care about the empowerment of all women, not just women like you, then you would be all about raising the minimum wage. The last thing you would do is chide the candidate who makes that a pillar of his platform as sexist, right? And so this is just that was a white feminist monologue. She wants to, you know, she wants to sort of draw our
imagine
sympathy.
The character was working class, talking about how she has to stand at the Walmart 12 hours a day and then go home and do the laundry for the kids.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm condescended to at work, and by work I mean a cushy law job where I sit in an air-conditioned office and make six figures. And I get catcalled on the street because I'm very pretty. So this is an attractive, upper middle class white woman singing the "Woe Is Me" tune. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, everybody should be paid equally for equal time and all that stuff. But just as liberals made it a huge victory for all women that the U.S. women's soccer team got a pay raise, right? That was a huge story, right? The woman with the pink hair, I forget her name, Rapinoe.
Megan Rapinoe.
Right, exactly. She got her team a raise, and oh my God, you know, she was star for a day over that. As if that has anything to do with the empowerment of ordinary working class women.
Overall, the Marvel Phase 4 has just it's just lazy writing. It's not that you can't put these kinds of messages in. And also the idea we just didn't have this until now is absurd. Linda Hamilton, going back to Terminator and Terminator 2. You have this badass woman, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This whole show built around what was essentially a female superhero. The difference was, and this is another problem with these, and She-Hulk is a perfect example, these characters are all Mary Sues, and it makes them very uninteresting. You need the characters to struggle. You need them to go on some kind of journey. You need them to have some kind of arc, which brings us to the training session. Probably demonstrates this better than anything else. Basically, you know, Bruce Banner has spent years and years and years mastering himself and learning how to control the Hulk and learning how to control his anger. She just comes out of the box a better Hulk than he does. She doesn't need any of that. She doesn't need any of that growth, any of that they're learning stuff. That's guy stuff. Women are perfect, don't you know?
He's gonna toss the boulder. Not a big deal.
Me?
Yeah, just grab a little boulder and take it easy on this person.
Oh, burn.
Very good.
Just trying to show you how it's done.
I'm shown.
Yeah. Man! Man! Being a Hulk asks for balance.
Yeah, so she doesn't need any of the insider training that he's going to provide. They seem to have decided that they cannot add these characters without degrading the classic characters. That in order to build these characters up, they have to tear the classic characters down. It didn't, and it doesn't have to be handled that way. And really, it's an insult to women to suggest that they're so narcissistic that women can never be shown in a position of weakness where they need help. I mean, Buffy, a lot of Buffy was actually built around the idea that slayers have a very short life. And a big part of what was keeping her alive was the support of her friends, that she needed people. Now, today, there were whole episodes and seasons that were built around the theme of how much she needed people to be able to deal with the pressures of being the Slayer. I don't think they would write that arc today because it weakens her, right? She's not perfect. She's not sufficient unto herself.
I mean, the movie that I thought of, because we are going to contrast the sort of white feminism of She-Hulk with the real feminism of another movie that came out recently called Prey. Not that Prey was a fantastic movie. I didn't think it was that great. I'm a sucker for monster movies myself. I love monster movies. And I thought this was good. It was fine for, an hour and a half movie.
I don't, it may be the expectations everyone was going in with, but I was definitely one of those who was surprised at how good that movie was.
Well, I saw it after the initial reviews came out. So I went in with high expectations. You probably went in with low expectations. Maybe that's the difference.
I went in expecting it to kind of be She-Hulk with Native Americans in the woods. Like I was, because I saw the preview where they say to her, "Why do you want to be a warrior?" And she says, "Because you think I can't be." And I thought it was just going to be this terrible ham-handed feminism off of that.
Well, that's the trailer.
And that's not what it was at all. They did themselves a disservice, I think, with that trailer. But one of the reasons I wanted to take a look at that also is this is the Disney Corporation, and Hollywood is doing this as a whole, but particularly Disney. They are the Hillary Clinton campaign of the entertainment world. In other words, anytime you give them legitimate criticism, you're an ist or a phobe. They duck all legitimate criticism that way, and they're greatly helped in that by some have pointed out, well, you have bad male superhero movies that don't get this level of vitriol, and they're right. They're right. Is there a certain contingent of basement dweller who's just rabid whenever they see a bad Marvel movie or a Star Wars film featuring a female protagonist or featuring a diverse cast? Yeah, absolutely. They deflect to those people and refuse to address any legitimate criticism. You cannot really say when She-Hulk and Prey came out, I think within a week of each other. The one was lauded by the same geeks who have all these complaints about She-Hulk. So if it's really misogyny, why didn't they hate Prey? And you can see that in the Rotten Tomato scores. They say, well, they review bombed She-Hulk. Okay, why didn't they review bomb Prey? If this is all about misogyny, why these two female-driven projects that were released at exactly the same time that appeal to a very similar audience traditionally, comic book movies and people who still care about the Predator franchise, why'd they love the one and not the other? It's She-Hulk
has an audience rating of Rotten Tomatoes of 50%, as you can see here, and Prey has an audience rating of 73%. And so, that's quite a big difference in overall audience ratings there. But in Prey, I mean, we'll show a couple of clips from that as well. Here's one where she is, you know, victimized by some men who don't think she has any business joining the hunt, so to speak. And so we'll watch that right now.
I saw it.
Saw what?
I saw what left those tracks. Okay. I couldn't see it until it was covered in blood, but it looked like a moot beats.
You saw a monster from a children's story?
It...
Stop! Enough!
All right, so you see there's a lot more struggle and a lot more grit there, and a lot more for the protagonist to overcome. One other clip that proved to be significant to the story later on, I won't spoil the ending for everybody, is a scene where Naru, the main character, gets stuck in some quicksand, and she has to pull her way out. She has her hatchet sort of strung to a rope, and she has to try to, as you can see here, throw that hatchet up against a tree and get it to stick on the tree so she can use that as leverage to pull herself out. And you see her struggling to do this over and over again. This reminds me of a great scene in a much, much better movie, Kill Bill Volume 2, where Uma Thurman gets buried alive in the casket, and she has to punch her way out of the casket while she's 6 feet underground. And we see her fail and fail and fail and fail over and over and over again. And it makes us root for her more and more and more with each failing. Now, that scene has a lot more power than this scene because that's a phenomenal film, and this is, you know, a pretty good monster movie, right? But it's the same kind of thing. And I mentioned Kill Bill because that's a perfect example of a strong female hero who is put through the ringer. I mean, the interesting thing is there were people who actually denounced those two films as misogynistic, which is, of course, absurd. One of the reasons why they're not misogynistic, one of the reasons why those are especially empowering films to a lot of women, I can't speak for them, but I know for a fact that there are a lot of women who love those movies, is because the first image we see of the bride, of Uma Thurman's character, in Volume 1 of that movie, is she's in her wedding gown, and she's bloodied up, and she's beaten half to hell, and her eyes are fucked up, and she's got blood in her teeth, and Bill is standing off screen, basically torturing her with words before he shoots her. And we see her just overcome these insurmountable odds, and she's victimized and brutalized in all these awful ways while she's in a coma in the hospital. One of the janitors allows somebody to have their way with her half-dead body, right? We don't want to get graphic about that, but like, she is subjected to the most vile misogyny you could imagine. But that's not the filmmaker being misogynist. That's the filmmaker exposing you to that so that you root for her more, to overcome all these obstacles and finally get her revenge on the man and men who did her wrong. And so in a scene like that in Prey, where we see the character fail, because at the beginning, you know, she wants to be this warrior. She wants to get this rank in her village that she is supposedly not worthy of. And they never actually even come out and say, you're not worthy of this rank because you're a woman. That's all unsaid. It's subtext. Right? Which is the way it should be. And so by the end, you know, she is trying not only to advance her status, but she's trying to survive. And that's the other thing about Prey versus She-Hulk. And it's the real difference, as I would say, between white feminism and real feminism is what's at stake here. Right? So Naru is fighting to become a warrior because she wants the status of becoming a warrior, but she also has to obtain that status in order to protect herself and her people from basically two vicious outside foreign forces. I thought that was a clever metaphor in itself. Not only does she deal with the alien predator, but she deals with the French colonists who, like the predator, are this foreign force that's coming to kill them all, right? So I thought that worked well. But there are real stakes in that movie. Okay, if she fails, she and her people get annihilated. Whereas the stakes in white feminism world is you continue to toil at $190,000 a year while the man down the hall makes $20,000 more than you. I'm not saying that's not an injustice, but you know what? Working class, look, the idea that you are paid less than what you're worth as a professional class attractive white woman. You go on TV and you express this as if it is the defining injustice of our time. You know what working class people say to that, including working class women? Oh, you're underpaid at your job? Take a number, right? Welcome to the fucking club. We're all underpaid at our job. You got people, working at fucking UPS warehouses, stocking trucks for $14.50 an hour in the middle of the night in 10-degree weather.
Oh, and very often these same people are not only not fighting to raise the minimum wage, a lot of them are unsympathetic to raising the minimum wage. Well, why should they get more? They think from the perspective of corporations and business owners, because that's who they're around. That's their class. Well, what about the business who's going to become less profitable? Like that. That's where their sympathies lie. And ironically, of all corporations to support, the king of the whitewashing corporations is Disney. I mean, that they are the masters of woke washing. This is a company whose workers were notoriously underpaid for years and years until it became such a scandal. They went out on strike and Disney raised it to $15.45 an hour, I think, in California. You had people working for Disney for 10 years who were only making $11 an hour, who had been with the company for 10 fucking years. 75% of people who work for Disney say they have trouble making basic expenses. 50% say they don't know how to make rent. This is the company that is pushing out She-Hulk and the Eternals and Ms. Marvel. It is the ultimate neoliberal corporation. It is a perfect metaphor of neoliberalism. They're taking that stand against Ron DeSantis. Meanwhile, they're thanking a concentration camp in China in the closing credits of Mulan. Now these people who are, so offended that anyone would take exception with some of these speeches and scenes and some of the feminist framing in She-Hulk, they have not a word to say about that. They don't boycott Disney. They don't refuse to buy those toys for their children. They don't refuse to subscribe to Disney Plus. They don't, none of this. And to top it all off, Disney is currently being sued for a wage gap. They're currently being sued by women who claim that the men make more than they do, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars more. Currently, right now. And you're going to have a show on with a monologue like this, and none of these people are going to say anything about it. At least be consistent. Now, the criticism, if it were really about these trolls who are anti-woke, man, it does not get much woker than an all-Native American cast with a female-led protagonist fighting dirty French people and an alien.
One thing I actually enjoyed about the wokeness of Prey, because I'm watching it and I'm thinking, okay, it kind of gets off to a bit of a slow start. You don't even see much of the monster until like a half hour, 40 minutes in. But I'm thinking, okay, this is a Predator franchise movie. Eventually, this monster is going to have to go ham on a bunch of people. Like every Predator movie has a scene where the monster just, massacres, 10, 20, 30 people. I'm thinking, is a movie this woke really going to show the Predator massacring Indians? Like, are they actually going to go there? Are we actually going to watch the mass slaughter of the Comanche people on screen at the hands of this alien? And then as soon as the French showed up, I'm like, oh, no, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. The Predator, he's going to kill all the Frenchmen. And it was cool. It was fun. It worked. Like, it worked because it was this surprise because you don't see the French colonists until almost an hour into the movie. And so it worked. You're like, oh, okay, now I get it. It's going to eventually unleash on those guys,
slaughter the French,
right? Exactly, and it worked. It was fun. It was great.
They did a great,
you handle it artfully.
They handled it artfully. Nobody has a monologue yes, the French are appropriating our way of life. Like nobody pushes out these talking points. They show, they don't tell. That is great filmmaking. What they're doing at Marvel, it's not about feminist themes or diversity being inappropriate. It's about laziness. It's about laziness, and it's about deflecting all criticism when they make shit products to the phobes and the ists and digging the trolls out of the basement and making it out that that's the only people who are criticizing this product. If it's Into the Spider-Verse, everybody loved that.
Yeah, I mean, I just want
to a Latino Spider-Man. It was great. It was great. Nobody complained about it. They're consistently, you do not get this backlash when it's actually good.
Please clap.